In Retopolis, all structure has been turned to chaos.
I see why you're so desperate to add romance to everything. Aren't you just projecting?
The most unfortunate election season in Retopolis' history.
To be frank, it makes me feel a little better that my men failed where you did. Truth be told, I usually don't like that you have to clean up all our messes. So having you make a mistake when my men did no better, I feel a bit relieved.
Curse you and your redemption story, Chief. That doesn't catch the romancer.
Getting a bit hot under the collar, eh, Captain?
Of course I am. It's my job to make sure that Retopolis stays safe, particularly now with a new mayor set to take office soon.
Against the backdrop of foul weather on account of the season.
Will the new mayor keep the foundational law intact?
Nobody would dare take out this town charter. They'll rewrite the thing by hand every year, don't they? In a land where candidates have to handwrite their own dossiers.
Let's see about this fellow now. What a comprehensive dossier. His handwriting is even aesthetically pleasing. Valedictorian in his class at Retopolis South High, summa cum laude from Retopolis U with an emphasis on research. This gentleman is an incredible academician.
Who will win the day? Might it be the foul romancer?
You dare to call me a villain? The real villains here are the silly creators who don't see any value in a good love story. Love stories are a woman's life. Or this woman, anyways. Romance is the ultimate bond, and all stories should have something with that in mind.
The new mayor-elect? Or could it be the chief of police?
Don't you dare forget that it's my job, as in one that actually pays wages and furnishes my home with a table and food to put on it. For you, this may be some game, but at the end of my career, I will be judged for how much I accomplished, whereas you don't face the same stakes.
Perchance it's our titular protagonist himself, the incredible Captain Writ.
Always a nice feeling to vote for the winner. Now, let's see what kind of leader he will be for this incredible town. Come to think of it, I'm actually a bit nervous to meet him for the first time in person.
Does the poor weather prevent voter turnout? Find out in Captain Writ and the Gun-Ho Leader, coming soon to old-timey radios near you.
And now, to the listeners of The Ritwit, a special glimpse at the story brought to you by the two Twit hosts. Enjoy Captain Writ and the Gung-Ho Leader. Music to my ears. With our goals established, let's talk strategy, dear Chief.
The next day, the captain adopted a stratagem originally used by the police, dressing plainly. Our hero was a bit worried because he wouldn't have access to his gear, and his powers were weaker out of the suit. In plain clothes, he waltzed around with a dud manuscript as temptation for the romancer. The dastardly romancer thought our Captain Writ was just another silly mark, so imagine her surprise when he simply dropped the manuscript and began grappling with her.
Let's see you try using your devastating utensil beyond arm's reach. That pen spinning new love plot threads in will not affect this skirmish.
The captain tried overpowering her with his size. The position was fairly suspect, and upon reaching the form, the romancer tensed up.
Don't tell me. Pinning me down for the kiss. You are hitting on me and skipping straight to the good stuff.
Her realization was only one-sided, it must be established, but upon thinking this line, she squirmed in what could only be termed anticipation.
I begin to see now why you're so desperate to add love stories even if they don't belong. You are desperate to find love.
Our hero leaned in to see her reaction. As he expected, she closed her eyes, puckered her lips, and craned her neck to meet his forthcoming kiss. The officers used this opening to swarm and slapped handcuffs on one wrist. Her eyes opened in fury.
You're just a tease, like all the others.
She made a tough go, thrashing around until the officers wrangled her into position to complete cuffing the criminal. Once chained, apparently uninterested in bondage, all the fight seemed to drain out of her. Successfully arresting her improved the spirits of both the police chief and our beloved Captain Writ.
You can access the full adventure by visiting patreon.com/Matthew Donald and supporting his works at the exclusive content level. Go find out just who the new mayor of Retopolis will be. Alternatively, tune into your nearest old-timey radio. For now, we thank the hosts of The Ritwit for sponsoring this excerpt of the quarterly serial from The Adventures of Captain Writ. We now return you to your regularly scheduled content.
Welcome, fellow nerds, to another episode of The Ritwit, the show with language as flowery as the early Jurassic. That's to say, not flowery at all. Flowers didn't evolve until the Cretaceous. And hey, that's an intro that works for both The Ritwit and my other show, Paleobites!
Do we have to ding that? I don't even know. But
Ding, 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 ding. I'm just going to say those
You're just going to say them.
I'm just saying these dings, yeah. Hopefully I've timed this right, because I want to make it so that this, and the Paleobites that comes out this week, also has this intro.
Oh my god.
You'll find out, because this comes out the day after the Paleobites, so... hardcore Matthew Donald fans.
Hardcore Matthew Donald fans.
Well, I can listen to both.
Intro.
And for more hardcore Matthew Donald stuff, subscribe to my OnlyFans. No.
Wow! Good lord!
Anyways. I
welcome.
know, I'm quite villainous, aren't I? But, you can't help but root for me. And speaking of which...
I don't root for you at all, sir. That villainous turn is too much. We're in our final episode of a series about rooting on certain characters, right, wrong, however it feels to you. We're on the other really, really hard shot, which is the one you don't expect, rooting for the villains.
Whoa! How could this thing happen? How is that possible?
But we'll talk about it. So while it's fairly obvious that villains aren't typically the objects of our support,
Probably not.
there are inevitably a few that we sympathize with more.
Oh, yes, of course.
How can writers tap into that response from their readers for the bad guys?
Motivations are key, but more than that, I think it's really important to understand where they come from and why they think that certain way, even if you don't agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
By humanizing them, you automatically garner some empathy, even if unearned in some instances.
Well, you call it humanizing even if they're wearing scales.
Anthropomorphizing, I guess. Adding empathy to it is interesting that we use the word humanizing to mean like add empathy and layers to them, implying that animals don't.
But because we understand that humans are far more complex than a lot of wild animals.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. You didn't have a lot of pets, so you don't know.
I have a pet at home.
That's true. You have that weird little dog thing.
Weird? How dare you?
He is kind of cute. Is it a she or she?
She.
Okay, she's kind of cute. Bit obnoxious, though.
She.
I've never really liked little dogs. I like big
does bark
dogs.
way too much. Well, my fun look has nothing to do with the podcast, but my sister originally wanted a Pomeranian. My mom's like, no!
Pomeranians are cute, though. But
Pomeranians are noise factories.
I guess that's true. But anyways, a completely different way, though, other than like adding sympathy to the villain, is to make all the heroes stupid and annoying. This works wonders in horror movies,
Oh,
We
man.
love seeing the killer brutally murder the heroes of their obnoxious morons who had it coming.
Oh God, what is that movie?
What movie? Yes.
One of our good friends recently got married. We were both in the wedding party at the bachelor party for that. Donald wasn't there, so he can't corroborate what this film was, but it was like this really bad parody of a B movie with had Chris Hemsworth in it and Anna Hutchinson.
Cabin in the Woods?
Yeah, Cabin in the Woods, that's it.
Yeah, actually, I've heard that's a really good movie.
Anna Hutchinson, by the way, was formerly a Power Rangers actress, so I was like, ooh, that's cool.
And she's all grown up now.
Well, there certainly was a side of that actress that we did not see on Power Rangers, I'll tell you that. Anyway, it was this movie. They do some really, unfortunately, to spoil just a bit, it's this massive game as part of a ritual. It is so bizarre. It just takes a weird turn.
Yeah, at first you think it's just a traditional horror movie, but it's like this weird satire of all of it.
It is a very, very strange satire of it. But anyway, they do these things, and you wonder why in the heck they're making these stupid decisions, but it turns out they're being, manipulated into situations that they may end up doing this thing.
I've heard it's a good movie.
If you can handle the content of it, there is a decent amount of blood, the horror elements, but it's
Joss Whedon, so
it is worth a watch.
Yeah, it's written by Joss Whedon, so that's pretty cool. I've heard it's pretty good if you're into horror movies, especially. So.
I'm not into horror movies, and I still enjoyed it. So.
Oh, there you go. Then it must be really good for horror movies. Oh, would you say it was better than you expected?
I didn't have any expectations, so yeah.
Yeah.
Got to keep that running joke.
Anyways,
apparently.
basically, you either elevate the heroes, or elevate the villains, or diminish the heroes. That's the best way to do it, I think.
I don't know
One
if
of the
wanted
two.
to say that or not.
But yeah, no, I did say that earlier.
Oh,
so.
I didn't hear it because I went on my tangent. But anyway, as far as I think, when you spend more time delving into the villain's motivations while keeping them generally, neutral,
Right.
or at least sensible to the audience, not outright evil. Like, oh, I want this for my 1000th planet to complete the necklace.
The necklace of planets.
Yeah, well,
That's pretty cool. How big is this guy?
there's a show I'm rewatching with a friend of mine from Japan. It's sorry to bring this up, but it's called Car Ranger.
Car Ranger.
It's a parody of it's a pastiche of the Sentai style, and there's one episode where the Villainous character wants this necklace, and she draws this diagram with this sweeping neckline on both sides of where you're theoretically holding it up, and then like 2 struts there, and she tells the best searcher they have in their faction, go find this for me. She discovered it was a bridge.
Cool.
And so of course, he tries to, pull out the bridge to present this necklace that she wanted to her. And when she finds out, she's disappointed. Oh, what's that? All I wanted is a stupid bridge. Anyway.
Bridges can be cool. Particularly suspension bridges.
Well, suspension, you see. Anyway, but giving the enemy commander an unassailable code of honor that is recognized even by the good guys, like, if only it came out differently, we would fight together.
Yes, perhaps in another life we could have been friends.
That old thing. Mm-hmm. Making them smell like roses by comparison to a protagonist with worse character traits.
Ooh.
Mentioned this a little bit last episode too.
Yes.
You need to have something that can be admirable in the enemy for a reader to support them emotionally, whether it's challenged and changed.
Right.
Reasoned and redeemed, what have you.
Of course, Yeah, just adding those kind of sort of noble things to the villain to make them sound like, oh, yeah, maybe, I don't know. That's one way to do it.
I suppose, while it sounded really cool the way I said it, I should probably give just a little bit more context. When I say challenged and changed, this quality is challenged, and it changes either for the worse, so they're more of a villain, or for the better because they're making a redeem motion.
Having a redemption arc.
Right, kind of a thing. So, anyways, of these 2 options, number 1, changing course to offer this villain a redemption story, or number 2, forcing the story to their end moment, which is better to you, twits?
Well, redemption stories are nice and all, and they can be the easiest way for people to root for your villain, like giving them a heroic sacrifice at the end to redeem themselves. They can work wonders. But on the other hand, it also turns them into a hero.
Yeah.
Even if it's not necessarily the protagonist.
Well, I mean, if they die, does it really matter what their allegiance is at that point?
Well, I guess it's true, but it depends on what you want to do. If it can go either way, whether the villain is the protagonist or the antagonist, but
sure,
I don't think it's of those 2 options. I don't know. I think for me personally, I think 1 can be really satisfying, but 2 is better written. I think is deeper. I think.
I would imagine that 2 is a bit more of a challenge because if you're redeeming this character in part, that part of you either wants to complete the whole thing, or you've grown attached enough to the character to obviously keep them around, and so to then say, well, I'm sticking to my plan, I'm killing them off. It's kind of hard.
Right, exactly.
I mean, killing off a character you don't like is somewhat easy, but killing off a character you've come to care for, oh my gosh, that's hard.
Right, exactly.
Well, it's my typical fence stance, of course.
Oh, yes. Anywhere in any situation, there is a fence in the middle of it, and David is sitting his ass on it.
About 8. No, anyway. This depends on the story. Sure, giving this character a chance to redeem himself is admirable and may endear the audience to them.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also something to be said for sticking to your gumption and making the tough choice to kill off a character that other people want to see succeed.
Ooh.
Even if they're a villain.
Right.
Of course, there may be enough time for you to honestly achieve both.
I mean, that'd be cool. Although
depends on where you start and where you choose the end to be, right?
I guess that's true.
But let's be real. I prefer...
Just saying, you prefer the first one?
I prefer 1 in most cases.
Yeah, like redeeming them. Well, I guess there's always the option, like you can say, oh, this villain's still technically a villain by the end, but there's you can see a little glimmer of thing that he might redeem himself eventually. If you
intend that the story continues, even if you're not really treating it.
Right.
Like, leave the door open, but don't actually cross the threshold, and somebody else will do that mentally, or heaven forbid in fan fiction will have it.
Right. Anyways.
So, here's something that's unfortunately really, really hard to get a read on, and the idea of a charismatic character. Does charismatic equal rooting for?
I think for some people, unfortunately, yes.
Well, I mean, some villains are inherently entertaining to watch or read about. Does that count as being charismatic? Does that count as being cheer-worthy? Or does it depend on the person?
Well, that's how a lot of sociopaths get people on their side. And that happens a lot in real life, too. I'm struggling to think of an example in real life that's not politically related.
Well, I mean, if it's a relevant example, we should probably forgive it and just go ahead.
Then I'm just gonna say it outright because at this point he's out of the picture. At this point, I'm just gonna say it. And listeners, if you're upset about it, whatever. We don't have that many listeners anyway.
If you're upset about it, you can choose what to do. If you want to write us angry emails, we probably won't share them.
Trump is, for a lot of people, was very charismatic. He got people listening to him, and he got people he motivated them. He told them the things they wanted to hear. He used his kind of inflammatory things to rile people up. Yeah. That's why he had his crazy following, because most Bush or Obama didn't have those followings like Trump did. I mean, people appreciated them or liked their certain things or didn't like certain things they did, but they never got rabid in their following like they did with Trump. So,
as somebody who is notedly
you're very independent.
Apolitical,
you're very independent
as possible, Trump was such a president that people like me can't help talking about this stuff anymore.
Yes, that's the thing, and he dominated the news cycle. Because he was just so inherently his stuff was so outrageous that people talked about him, and that's why I think, unfortunately, if he were to run again in 2024, he'd be the nominee. If he's allowed to run again, if he still gets away with all this stuff, then... But I'm bringing that up, basically, because, he got away with being charismatic. And if most other people in his party, they won't be able... I mean, some of them might, but, if one of them tries to run for president thinking, I stood with Trump in all this way, so therefore Trump's base will follow me, that's not necessarily true.
No.
Because they don't have that charisma that he has.
Well, and the other thing, too, is that by seeing somebody like former President Trump be who he was, enabled a lot of people to be who they natively want to be.
Which sucked for a lot of us, but
and
yes.
just generally, kept on the down low. That said,
anyways,
let's turn this back to
that's
fiction.
What I bring up. I apologize if you have any Trump supporters here who are upset about that.
Let's turn it back to fiction, though.
Yes. I don't know, that was just the best real-life example I can think of. Anyway,
sure.
But it can be, in fiction, it can be easier to separate the charisma from readers rooting for them, especially in fiction aimed at younger audiences where the complexities of sociopaths and manipulation aren't as explored. So it doesn't automatically be rooting for, but it definitely can. It's not A equals B. But I have no idea what mathematical property would be, and I'm not checking. I refuse.
Well, A equals B is by itself not a property. If you're doing A equals B and B equals C,
I don't give a damn.
Which I believe is the transitive. But we have had this wrong before, so.
Anyway.
Well, okay, Donald wrote the question, so I had a funny pun answer here. Which person, the character or the reader?
Ooh.
You can ooze charisma without being somebody the reader is proud to pay attention to.
Yeah.
The whole love to hate, hate to love thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, as with protagonists, the things compelling us to pay attention to these villains might be radically diverse.
Right.
One has an amusing head tick. Another a funny speech habit, clicking their tongue when they're angry.
Oh, interesting.
Some dominate the page from their entrance to their exit despite the other characters. One seems heartful in a castle filled with loneliness. A still different character with a scheming mind they only reveal in the quietest solitude.
Ooh.
Supposed bonds of trust, all the while scheming against someone, itself a common method, draws attention to palace intrigue. And for some reason, people enjoy watching empires crumble.
Some people do, and I think some people just are inherently drawn to that kind of terrible stuff. I don't get exactly why, but I guess it's something like this with that morbid curiosity. But true crime podcasts are so freaking popular. People love that kind of stuff. They love reading about these true crimes and all these murders and all the horrifying ways that these people got murdered or all this other stuff when these things that people did. For some people, that's just, they have to know that kind of stuff, even if it disturbs them. So...
Well, if you're me and trying to appreciate, is there a justification that I can feel that I can accept but I'm not one of those people who's like obsessively listening to true crime. I don't seek out here's the story behind this murder,
Right,
I just don't
exactly.
do
Well, I
that.
think some people just treat it like, you know how you can't not look at a car crash or
I
something.
mean, that's unfortunately the most exciting part of NASCAR.
It is. That's what everyone's rooting for.
I don't know. I'd root for it because those things can bring traumatic injuries,
Yeah.
death in severe
But
circumstances.
by damn, it looks cool. But yeah.
Well, I don't know. It looks horrifying.
Yeah, no, it does
But
look horrifying.
I mean, it is a spectacle.
It is
not
a
good
spectacle. It's not a good spectacle. I don't want people to die. If those things were armored cars and they could go all floppy and move all around,
I'm not
like
even sure what movie like flotilla that would reference. Is that Mad Max?
I don't know. Well, Mad Max, they're all kind of thrown together, but just like that way they can all bang into each other, and go flying and crash into each other in various ways. But the people inside them are fine.
Well, and obviously they do take extreme cautions as much as they can with safety gear inside the vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, because of all that gear, if the car starts flaming, you're kind of hosed.
That's true. You better get a hose, hopefully.
Well, I mean, they have all these things on the track to keep drivers safe as possible. But
Right.
even so, it is still traumatic to see a crash, and yet in the moment it is happening,
You just like
you just lose your breath. You don't know what to say. It's just, oh my God, what is going on?
his eyes, listeners, just like, oh my God. I don't know why. What is the way he turned his head? Oh my God, what is
I
going?
mean, it's theoretically moving. Anyway, I was thinking of is there a way to tie it into that meme where the guy is standing with his girlfriend and it's like NASCAR crash as the other woman walking
Oh, I
by?
love that meme. There's so many. I know everyone uses that meme like crazy, but it's so applicable to so many things.
different things. It's true. But I mean, this is so.
I like
You
this
know-
one specifically that's like, that he's looking at her, and the girl that he's looking at says Jurassic Park, and the other girl that's like, is like other dinosaur media.
Is that in the Copperlight posting group?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So as far as depending on the person, I mean, I am very quick to remind that everything is somebody's favorite. So certain characters, no matter how depraved they may be, somebody is probably rooting for them or like hoping that they see it to the end, hoping whatever for various number of reasons.
You see a lot of bumper stickers of cars, and a lot of times they either, sometimes you have the heroic characters like the Autobot symbol or the
But there are people who rock Decepticon logos.
Decepticon logos or the Empire logos or like the Eye of Sauron, or Darth Vader.
The Eye of Sauron's. Oh, okay, I haven't seen that one, but yeah, Darth Vader. I've seen.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really seen the Eye of Sauron either. I was just trying to think, what's the symbol of the bad guys in Lord of the Rings? I guess the ring.
Yeah, this strange. Why is there just a circle on their window, Mommy? I don't know.
It
All
seems
right.
to be a form of Elvish. I can't read it. There are few who can. All right.
What are some examples of villainous characters the narrative actually intended you to root for?
Ooh.
If not specific examples, this is an inclusion for my sake. Then archetypes will do.
Well, horror movies are the big ones, particularly those in the slasher genre.
Oh, gosh.
Like when people watch those movies, do they remember the victims or those like lucky to escape enough to escape? No, they remember Freddy Krueger or Jason or Jigsaw or whatever. Like, granted, some horror movies aren't about this. For instance, the most recent and quite well received, The Invisible Man, is definitely about the victim more than the killer and how she escapes and defeats him. And also, like, a lot of, like, Stephen King's It is about the kids that grow up to be the adults. Like,
Fair.
I mean, Pennywise is very notable, but we don't really root for him. We're rooting
The sad part of it is, and this is true in Cabin in the Woods as well, like anyone who survives, you tend to see them stained.
Right.
Metaphorically, literally, whatever.
Right.
That, they can't come out the same because of this traumatic ordeal that they're facing, right?
Right. Exactly. But and in that sense, you kind of root for them to confront their demons and other stuff. Like in the first of the new It movies, when the kids eventually beat up against the clown, and it's like, looks like you're the one who's afraid now. It's treated as like this sort of awesome
Cathartic.
moment. Yeah, it's great.
Even though they're hopelessly oh my gosh.
They eventually managed to drive him away for 27 years or whatever it is. So,
But I mean, it's one of those things that you look at it and it may inspire something different than just someone telling you in plain speaking voice what it is. Because then you hear that and you're just like, ooh, that's cringy. But then you
Right.
look at the video and it's like, oh my God, yeah, they did it. Woo!
right. But this is not those things. This is about the about the villain. Most of the time, we're in it to watch people die horrific, bloody, gruesome, disgusting, gore-filled, gut-filled, bone-crunching, head-slicing, ball-bursting deaths. And so the movies deliver. Anyways, So, but there are other examples, of course. For instance, the Joker movie, like a movie that, well, I still think is overrated as hell and way less deeper, sophisticated than it thinks it is. I'm getting more respect for it just for the fact that it exists and it is successful.
Well, speaking of the true crime kick, the Joker, a movie that's featuring the main villain guy.
Right. But, like, not all comic book movies are the same, so it's nice
Sure.
to see something different become a hit.
Well, and, there are a lot of people who write about films, TV for a living who are saying that we're rapidly approaching the bubble. It has not burst yet, but the point where we're going to have too much, and so it's going to reverse in the opposite direction where we're going to have like a lull again. Kind of like after the Batman films in the late 80s, early 90s, and then there really wasn't anything until Spider-Man and X-Men revived the genre.
Yeah, because like there was little things. There was like Blade, and there was like Steel.
Because, that was isn't a hero. But anyway, you get the idea.
Yeah, so but then...
And a lot of them involving Shaquille O'Neal.
A few of them, yes.
Anyway.
God. The part of the problem with the movie Steel, among many problems, was that Shaquille O'Neal was so big that he couldn't have a stunt double.
Yeah.
And so they could really do that good action scenes because he's not like a fighter or anything, and he has to be slow and what.
Yeah, they didn't have enough CGI stuff at the time to really do anything with the.
Anyways, but so in terms of archetypes, the one I think that definitely works this way is the anti-hero's less known cousin, the anti-villain.
Oh, yes.
The villain, which, while still on the side of the bad guys, has less bad qualities and might not even be a bad person. They just happen to oppose
in circumstance that they seem to be with the antagonists, right?
For a far, far, far lighter example than anything I've said so far, look at the most shining example of this in the Disney animated canon, Kronk from The Emperor's New Groove. Believe it or not,
I believe in the TV show they made him more like a sidekick.
Yeah, but in the definition of the narrative for the original movie, he is a villain. He's just the best, though, and we all love him. Helps that he's not the main villain and just works for the main villain instead.
Well, there is that, too. And, I mean, these type of characters aren't typically your main villains, are
Ooh,
they?
actually, in that movie, Cusco works well, to go back to the first episode that we did today, of a hero we're supposed to root against. We don't want him to tear down the village that Pacha's at for his Cusco-topia.
Well, of course, the Emperor's New Groove riffing on the Emperor's New Clothes, and so there's a lot
It's just like that movie's deeper than we thought.
Hey, and it's something to be said that this is probably on the minds of the creators making the stuff, and just whether you appreciate the extra layer or not is entirely in the mind of the viewer.
Right. But anyways, so yeah, those are some of my examples. What about you?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to judge intent when there's a room full of several different people, but anytime a superhero TV show gets more into fleshing out of the villain's motive and backstory, it induces pathos in the audience.
Yes.
Why do we ascribe the ideas... Who do we describe those ideas to when there are a bunch of different writers?
Right.
And more importantly, how far does it have to go down the road of root for this person right here, flag waving, as opposed to like subtle hints?
Right, exactly.
I mean, unfortunately, the audience isn't guaranteed to appreciate all the gestures or react how they were expected to. And yes, I know that giant sigh you just heard is creators everywhere. With this scene in mind, because it might work for some viewers, but not all of them.
Right.
Readers, but not all of them.
Right, exactly.
That said, some of my favorite villain characters start treading ground where you want to root for them without them ever becoming true good guys.
Right.
The show Kamen Rider Drive.
Oh, yes.
Villains,
another Kamen Rider
example.
one. Yeah, yes.
The Roy Mutes. It's spelled with a D between the I and M, but because of Japanese pronunciation, I leave the anterior D off usually.
Oh, like Voldemort, who was supposedly supposed to be Voldemort, but then the movies were like Voldemort, and then J.K. Rowling was like, fine, whatever.
But that's a posterior T. Moving on.
Anyways.
More for death anyway. Are established to desire human emotions. So they have their own emotion that helps them evolve, which they grow stronger and allows them the power to reach their goal of subjecting humans to surpass their creator.
Right. Okay, interesting.
One character, the leader of the group, whose name is Hart, is so compassionate and understanding that at times he's downright reasonable.
And this is a villain?
Yeah.
Whoa!
He's so good at seeming good that even the protagonists want him to give up his mission and join them because he's worth saving.
Join me. Imagine we could accomplish together, but this time said by the heroes to the villains, rather than the other way around.
But Hart can't bring himself to do it.
Even though he's got a heart. His name is Hart.
It compromises his morals in a way that he's unable to agree, and it legitimately hurts when the final confrontation between the protagonist and Hart has to happen. That's some damn good character development.
That is. That sounds really interesting.
Fun note, by the way, while we're on the subject of Drive, our watch,
the movie
not
Drive
Donald,
with Ryan Gosling, yes.
not Donald in mine. Watch of the show Kamen Rider Drive was in some part what prompted the entire set idea from our mutual friend.
Oh, yes.
So here's a shameless plug. Go read about it. If you can find ways to legally do this, watch it.
Of course. Anyways,
moving on from that. But yes, Kamen Rider Drive, because of Hart itself, and my friend and I who watched that show had such to do about this character that that's where this idea came from.
Right,
so
of course.
Thank you very much for that. We didn't remember to thank him in the last episode, so thanks doubly.
Thank you very much.
Idea.
This has been an interesting set, I must say.
Hope you're listening to it. Anyway, as far as rooting for the villains, I'm sure there's more to be said, but we'll let smarter people say that. So,
yeah, we're just a bunch of dumb writers that have a podcast for some reason. Why do we have every white 20 to 30-something man has a podcast nowadays.
Well, as I said last time, if we can make a podcast claiming superiority, why can't you?
Yeah, go and make your own better podcast, listeners. But
Prove it. Send us links.
But
anyway,
if they end up being more popular than ours, can you please just say, hey, listen to the listen to the Ritwit, guys.
Just make sure, don't forget where you came from. If we inspired you to start.
How do you know where you're going if you don't know where you've been? Anyways.
And speaking of our fans...
Oh, yes. This
we'll
classic segment.
We'll get into our last segment, reading the fan mail.
Yes.
Thanks again for all of your feedback since the last time we had this segment. To those of you who asked us not to share your stuff on the air, hopefully you got the answers or advice that you sought. To share some of the best ones we did receive, however.
Ooh.
Here goes.
Yes.
From listener Allie G. in Colorado, please tell me and everyone else all about your Valentine's Day this year. I imagine so many things. I need you to set the record straight.
You know, I might be seeing someone. Might. I don't know. It's weird. I don't know. Bumble was on a dating app. It seems to be going all right so far, but, you never know.
Allie.
Ghosts could happen.
Allie, your enthusiasm is so nice that it hurts. But, after all, both of us spoke by phone to wish each other
Happy Singles Awareness Day
instead. So, but it's a treat that you thought so highly of us.
I'm just waiting for one of those days where some really nice and
some
sweet
really
and
real
attractive woman picks up Megazoic, reads it, and is like, oh my God, I am in love with this author.
Okay. Wait. Why would reading a story, one creative product, prove that you were in love with the creator?
It allows them to see the window that is my soul.
I thought that was the eyes.
I don't. This book is my eye.
His picture is in the back, I think. So.
It is. Anyway.
Here's another one from listener Bart F. out of the Seattle area, addressed to me specifically. Thank you for remembering that,
Okay, I'm going to go check my phone here and play Angry Birds. You hold on. I banked the microphone. Anyway. All right, no.
What are you doing?
No, keep going.
Why aren't you engaging? Anyway, I'm a humongous Tokusatsu fan. Bart is, apparently. So while I think it might be too often for this podcast, it's always rewarding to hear your obvious passion for the topic, David.
It is. Anyways, what are you saying? Sorry, I'm about to get this one yellow bird to get this one thing here and get the
Thanks
pig.
for representing our niche product to the listeners. Is there any way I can support this content or maybe even some more specific Toku-based content from you?
Oh, in terms of Toku-based content, the Patreon is not what we're looking for. But in terms of your thing...
Give me a minute, Donald. I need to compose myself. I'm practically tearing up over how wonderful that one was.
Dang it, I only got 2 stars on this level. I didn't get the pigs quick and with enough birds in time. Anyways.
Oh, this is the nicest email I've ever received from this venture.
It had to happen one of these days. Oh, look, I got one of these big fat red birds. I can just go whoop.
Okay, Bart. I've been holding on to this response until we could record this segment.
I wanted to respond to you, but I figured you might as well do it on the air since you wanted us to share this anyway. But I'm going to email you some information regarding tokusatsu communities that I'm involved with, so look forward to that.
Which should be great.
Maybe we'll chat in those places. As for me personally, I'm still preparing the first episode of a new podcast.
Yes.
Go figure, it will feature tokusatsu heavily in the first outing.
I mean, that makes sense. Both of you guys love that stuff, so...
Yeah, so there's that. Anyway, the next email, I'm super glad that Donald brought this one to my attention as well.
Okay,
but here,
yeah. I'm putting away Angry Birds. All right, I'm listening now.
But here from Matt C. in Alberta,
Canada. Another Matt.
Just started out listening to your podcast, and I think it's amazing, eh?
Oh, yeah, he would say that.
I notice it infrequently you have guest hosts, and I was wondering what it takes to be a guest host for the Ritwit. I'm another Matt. That gives me enough qualifications, right?
Well, guess what? We're actually a bit of a... We're actually going to have a Matt C. as a guest host. But he's not from Alberta, Canada. It's not you.
Well, our esteemed Canadian Matt. You're probably not the only Canadian, Matt, but we'll see, I guess. First of all,
I would doubt it.
First of all, I hope that your winter isn't keeping you down because yikes. Second, I'll allow Donald to correct me on this if I'm wrong, but mostly it's a consequence of knowing someone who gets in touch with us frequently.
If you're friends with us and you can stop by the studio,
like
or use
all
Skype.
The times I've needed a pinch hitter guest host because it's never been Donald, you might notice. It's been another of Donald's friends. So I'd have to say, maybe you should wine and dine us a little bit first.
Yeah, come on, get to know us, become friends.
I'm only slightly kidding, but not about the staying in touch with us more frequently if possible. But that's a very good question. Thank you very much, Matt C.
If you gave us $100 in the Patreon account, I'd bet you'd be on the podcast for one episode. Nah.
He is letting you know his price, listeners.
Maybe $150.
You're cheap. Anyway, this last email here comes from one Hannah S. out of Georgia.
Oh, yes.
Do you guys have a line, how much is too much, on sending a contact? Given your self-deprecating humor and content ideas, I'm really getting an inconsistent message of what you would like us listeners to say.
Oh, wow. This is an interesting email. What?
Hannah, it is a lovely question if I've ever heard one. Personally, I draw the line at getting too invasive, too personal rather than podcast-based in at least some form.
Yeah, that's one way to do it, yes.
Or straight up bashing while providing nothing for us to improve. Yes, sometimes those emails are so amusing we share them despite the senders, but it never feels good to read them at first, so...
I mean, it depends on how funny it is. Sometimes they can hate us, but in a funny way.
As I said, sometimes they're amusing.
Yes.
Anything else, though, is probably fair game. But if you think you've crossed the line, we'll tell you in a response.
Yeah.
I mean, if we think you've crossed the line, we would definitely not be so shy as to say, and not be so shy as to
We're going to read it in
that.
shame to all the listeners. No, we're not going to do that.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. We want to respect your privacy. So, hey, if it's something that we don't feel like we can share, if you don't want us to share it, or if you think it's too much, we'll tell you if it is.
Right.
So, please keep listening to our podcast.
Yes.
And thank you so much for all your support.
This is a good podcast, right? Please.
It's a good podcast. And if you really want to be a good fan, there are plenty of ways to support us. Getting in touch with us is one way.
That's it for this week. So a huge thank you to our patrons so far. Contact us at mattd@matthewdonaldcreator.com for any general questions to other co-hosts. Mm-hmm. Once you start your show about tokusatsu, I know it's not about tokusatsu.
It's not just tokusatsu, but
it's mostly tokusatsu. No?
Can't deny that.
Anyways, once you start that, you'll have your social media links. But for now, you can follow me at Matthew Donald Creator on Facebook, at MatthewDonald64 on Twitter, and MatthewDonald64 on Instagram. Why 64? Because that's the amount of times I've crapped myself in public. I'm not ashamed of it, clearly.
Well, I mean, who knows if it's actually the real reason? Who knows if it's not just a factor of 64?
What? Okay.
How many times you crapped yourself in public?
I don't know. I don't know anymore. Who knows these things?
I don't know.
What does 64 mean anyways? I just close my eyes sometimes and I just see 64.
I just close my eyes and think you randomly typed in a number. But anyway, if you'd like to become a patron, please go ahead and check that out. All that support does a lot for us in getting more content out to you guys.
Yes.
Wherever you're listening to us from, please leave a rating, comment.
All that stuff.
All of that stuff. And thank you so much for listening. For now,
I have books on
this is
Amazon.
the end of our set about rooting interests for characters, but we'll be back next time with more on a new set.
I'm Matt Donald.
I'm Matt David. Thanks for listening to The Writ Wit, where us two twits have twitted ourselves out about writting.
Yay!
Stay safe, stay healthy, wear a mask in public, get a vaccine if you have the opportunity.
Yes, if you're over 65 and listening to this for some reason.
As I said, if you have the opportunity.
Anyways, all right, bye.
We'll see you next time. Bye.
The Writ Wit
Always a nice feeling to vote for the winner.